For 30 years, every American mortgage ran through the same three-digit number. FICO charged the banks 60 cents to print it, then $4.95, now $10 per score. Same algorithm, same data, 16 times the price. And for the first time in 70 years, somebody in Washington just said, enough. This is the story of the most boring monopoly in finance. The 88% margin it printed in silence, and the July afternoon in 2025 when the dam finally broke. $10. That is what FICO will charge the credit bureaus for a single mortgage score starting in 2026. It is the same number generated by the same software that cost 60 cents per pull from 2018 through 2021. There is no new ingredient. There is no rising cost of goods. There is only a company that finally figured out exactly how much its customers would tolerate, and then asked for a little more. Here is the quiet monopoly thesis, stated plainly. The greatest businesses on earth are not the ones with the biggest brands or the slickest products. They are toll booths. They sit on top of a piece of infrastructure that everyone has to cross, and they charge a tiny fee that nobody questions, because the alternative is unthinkable. FICO is the textbook case. You do not buy a FICO score. Your lender does. Your lender does not really choose FICO. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac chose for them 3 decades ago and never revisited the decision. That is not a product. That is a toll gate with regulatory cement around it. 88%. That is the operating margin on FICO scores segment in fiscal 2025. Not gross margin, operating margin. After everything, put it in dollars. $1.17 billion in scores segment revenue, $1.03 billion of operating income. 88 cents of every revenue dollar falls straight to operating profit, and that margin has held steady across 2023, 2024, and 2025. That number is what a near-zero marginal cost algorithm looks like when the government has mandated it for 30 years. Look at this curve. 60 cents per score from 2018 through 2021. $4.95 in 2025, which FICO itself described as only the 4th royalty change in 30 years. Then $10 through the traditional bureau channel in 2026. Per Equifax's own public statement, that is roughly a 16 times increase in 5 years. This is not pricing. This is a company testing the ceiling of a market that has no exit door. And the customers cannot leave. Roughly 90% of U.S. lenders use FICO scores to assess borrower creditworthiness. By FICO's own published figures, the score sits at the center of about $2 trillion in annual U.S. mortgage originations. $2 trillion of credit decisions, all flowing through one 3-digit gatekeeper. When you are that embedded in the plumbing, you do not have customers. You have hostages. And the financials show it. Total company revenue climbed from $1.38 billion in fiscal 2022 to $1.95 billion in fiscal 2025. The scores segment alone grew 27% year-over-year in fiscal 2025 and 34% in the third quarter. This is what compounding looks like when nobody can undercut you. But every quiet monopoly eventually gets loud. And when FICO finally got loud enough that mortgage executives started complaining in the financial press, Washington started listening. On July 8, 2025, after 70 years of uncontested pricing power, the federal regulator that oversees Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac made a single announcement, and FICO's universe has not looked the same since. The Federal Housing Finance Agency ordered immediate acceptance of VantageScore 4.0 on every Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac mortgage. It was the first government-sponsored enterprise-approved FICO alternative in 3 decades. VantageScore's own analysis estimates the move could unlock up to $1 trillion in new high-quality mortgage loans for up to 5 million Americans. In November, Fannie Mae rolled out the disclosure machinery to push VantageScore data into the capital markets. The monopoly's regulatory cement, in other words, started to chip. FICO's response was clever and ruthless. On October 1, 2025, it launched a Mortgage Direct license program that lets resellers calculate and deliver FICO scores directly, cutting Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion out of the distribution chain entirely. The market understood instantly. The next day, TransUnion shares fell about 12.5%. Equifax dropped roughly 8.7%. FICO had decided that if competition was coming, it would rather eat its own distribution partners than share the table. And the new pricing tells you everything. Through the bureaus in 2026, $10 per pull. Direct from FICO, $4.95 per pull, advertised as roughly half the traditional fee. But here is the catch. FICO also charges $65 per funded loan as a success fee on top of the per pull royalty. The discount is real on the front end. The economics on the back end are designed to recapture every dollar the bureaus used to take, and then some. Here is what FICO got wrong, in our view. For 70 years, this was a textbook quiet monopoly. A tiny royalty embedded in a regulated workflow on a number nobody thought about. The right move, the patient move, would have been to stay invisible, raise prices gently, let the moat keep compounding. Instead, FICO pushed roughly 16 times in 5 years. That kind of pricing is not invisible. It shows up in earnings calls, it shows up in lender lobbying, it eventually shows up on a regulator's desk. The scores segment still prints an 88-cent operating margin on every revenue dollar, but the silent part is over. And the silent part was the whole business. FICO is still going to dominate 2026. VantageScore will take years to ramp. But the structural breach is real, and it is permanent. The lesson for investors is simple. The best toll booths are the ones nobody notices. The moment a quiet monopoly gets greedy enough to make the front page, the clock starts ticking on its margin. If you want more breakdowns like this on the businesses quietly compounding in the background of the economy, subscribe to Quiet Monopoly. We find the toll booths before anyone raises the toll.